Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Integrative You Radio. We got Dr. Nick and and myself
And Dr. Nikki Rizzo in the house.
in the house. Guys, if someone tells me that they have lactose intolerance one more time, I might actually lose my mind. And they just say, no, it's just because my mom had it and my grandma had it and my dad had it. And I'm just like, that's not how this works. So here's the podcast where I get to tell you where it really comes from. But we have Dr. Nick here, of course, because there's two different aspects here. One,
Everything's always a half truth.
half truth, yes. And yes, maybe your grandma and your mom and your dad and your auntie and everybody had lactose intolerance, but lactose intolerance stems from gallbladder dysfunction. And they're like, yeah, no, my gallbladder's fine. I'm like, for the love of Pete, that's because you haven't had gallstones yet? Is that why you're saying it's fine? Because that's not how it works. It takes a significant amount of years before you fully get gallstones or actual gallbladder inflammation, bile duct inflammation. That means that the issue has been brewing for a decade to decades. So, if you have lactose intolerance, you cannot break down lactose. You cannot break down the fats that are in dairy. And this is because your gallbladder is not working properly. The thing about the gallbladder is it is attached to our liver, which is the primary organ that is in charge of filtering all the shit out of our bodies. That's literally and figuratively. But primarily, your liver is a giant filter. It filters out all the toxins you come in contact with, which is a lot nowadays. We'll get into that later. It is also what is going to filter out caffeine, which most of us are drinking on a regular basis. It's filtering out medications, everything from your prescriptions to your over the counter medications, which most people are taking on a regular basis as well. So if
But
you
I
want to,
don't but I don't drink alcohol,
oh,
coffee, or do
yeah, I
medications.
didn't even
My
mention alcohol
my
because
my liver
alcohol
should be
is,
fine. My liver
yeah,
should be fine. I don't do any
because
of those things.
that's the primary thing we hear is that why would my liver be compromised? I don't drink or I drink very minimally. And I'm like, alcohol is just one compound that is being filtered through the liver compared to all the other things. So for
I
the
thought the liver was
person,
made just for alcohol only. We have a specific organ that's just made for alcohol.
yeah. But I find it funny because I'm like, okay, you hear about people, we live in Italy. You hear about people that are in Italy and they drink a glass of wine every day. They actually, many of the older generation here in Italy, they think it's the key to their health was having a glass of red wine every day. And but the funny thing is that if you're having a one glass of red wine that is not infused with pesticides and herbicides and everything else and does actually have some benefit to it, and two aspects is that one, if they use a very specific process with winemaking, you can actually still maintain a lot of the antioxidants that come from the grape. And so you can actually have some health benefits with wine, again, if it's done properly. But the other thing that Nick and I have learned now living in Italy is that there are still a ton of wineries that they pick those grapes by hand. Like they are literally people out for extended amounts of time through the harvesting season, picking the grapes by hand. They don't do that in the US. It's all machine based. And so when you think about the amount of TLC and love being put into the winemaking process, that if you people you for those of you new to this podcast, you could be like, that sounds fucking crazy. I promise you, it is not crazy. It's just human
Well, a study
touch.
just also came out and 100, I mean, they didn't test everything because it's impossible, but out of all the wines they tested, organic, non-organic, etc., in the States, everyone had traces of glyphosate.
Oh yeah. We used to live in California and we would go to Napa and we were young and we were like, "Oh, wine, we're so cool." And we after probably our third trip to Napa and getting into the Napa wines, I don't know about you, but I couldn't drink wine anymore. I didn't drink wine for years because I got so sick. Like between my stomach and the headache that I would get from drinking minimal amounts of Napa wine. And at the time, I didn't know why. I didn't understand. But it's because of all of the different fertilizers and pesticides and
Well, and we're
acaricides.
friends with a gentleman whose family owns a large grape farm in California. And he goes, it doesn't matter if it's organic or not, because the field next to the organic
Yeah,
is not. And, however they're spraying, et cetera, cross contamination, like he's like, nothing's organic.
yeah, yeah. No, it's true. And don't get me wrong, when we get into the idea of lactose and we get into the idea of dairy products as well, milk and ice cream and everything else, there is a different processing that's happening in other countries as well. So this is sometimes why people that have lactose intolerance, they can go to places like Italy or France and they can consume some level of dairy and not be irritated. But overall, it's because it's a compounding factor, guys. If you have a liver that is overloaded with toxins, so I'll give my example that I've given a million times over is if you have a vacuum, you have the best vacuum on the market, you dropped your, 600 or more on your Dyson, you know that it's good mechanics, but you use the vacuum over and over and the filter is now at max capacity. So you would go ahead, try to use your vacuum, and you would say, my vacuum's not working. And it's not that there's anything mechanically wrong with the vacuum, it's just that the filter is full. And if you go and dump the filter, you'll be good to go. It's a very similar concept when it comes to the liver. If you are going to consume different toxins knowingly or unknowingly for a series of days, weeks, months, years, decades, then it's going to get to a point where your liver is totally, the filter is full, it's maxed out. And now it's not processing properly. And if anything, the ducts that are inside of the liver where the bile is being made, the bile, instead of it moving through the duct system like water, like a river, it's becoming more like sludge. And so what happens is now you have this thickening of the bile, and now you're going to have the liver spit the bile into the gallbladder, and it's going to sit there. It's going to be too thick, too sticky to move out into the intestines, essentially for you to poop it out. So now you're having this backup of this bile that now looks like sludge, feels like sludge, that's has a ton of toxins trapped in it, but your liver is quite large, your gallbladder is teeny tiny. So the first place you're going to feel symptoms is going to be your gallbladder. But if you have had gallstones, gallbladder problems, gallbladder inflammation, anything, you have a compromised liver. I don't care what your blood work says, if your liver enzymes are fine, if your doctor says, no, your liver's fine. There's no possible way that if you have had gallbladder attacks or issues, that you have a healthy liver. It started in the liver, guys. It started there. So the
Well,
moral of the
and
story,
we've had people show up, not saying that, blood work's the most reliable thing, but we've had people show up with normal liver levels and still have an autoimmune liver.
oh, well, that's like 98% of the people that we work with. I
Will
think
have an autoimmune.
meaning most people, let's go with 95% of the people that we have tested have never had elevated AST or ALT, which are the liver enzymes that your conventional primary care doctor will run. Those two enzymes, you have to have something acute, like in the moment happening with your liver that you would probably feel pain or discomfort or have some specific issues. You might have jaundice, yellowing of your eyes, yellowing of your skin. Like that's when those enzymes, AST and ALT, are going to be elevated. Most people are dealing with these micro traumas to the liver that is the compounding of toxins, 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 toxins. And guys, let's get clear really quick. I was going to say this before, but your Dunkin' Donuts coffee, your Starbucks Frappuccino coffee latte caramel frappe shit every day, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, that's fucking up your liver because not only are you getting the sugar, well, if it's even real sugar, if it's high fructose corn syrup or anything else, and then if you're getting your sugar free chemicals, that's all chemicals going through the liver, then you're getting all the pesticides that are used in the with the coffee beans. So, and then you're getting mold on top of it because of the storage process of the coffee. So you're literally getting a super dose of toxins every time you drink those types of drinks, which is so many people. So again, going back to the idea that it's just about alcohol is a complete and utter facade. I don't want to say half truth, mistruth. Like it, there is so many things that you're doing on a regular basis that are contributing to your liver being overloaded. I forgot the first part of what I was talking about.
I was like, so can we jump on to the really good stuff?
Okay, jump onto the really good stuff.
Which is interesting is, people talk about alcohol being so bad today. Majority of people in the world and society are polarized so that something's all good or all bad. We've seen this that, dairy's all bad, fats are all bad. Then we go through the phase that eggs are bad. Oh, no, eggs are good. Like we go through phases that everything's all bad and everything's all good.
Honestly, in our industry, I think it's the worst. I like think about how many things that were fed to us through different seminars and continued education through our careers. It was like we went from it was the paleo, it was the keto, it was the carnivore, it was every few months it was the new thing that was going to save everyone.
This supplement is gonna save everything. This is the only all good. And
For
then,
those of you
oh,
on YouTube, you see my face and my rolling of my eyes. For those of you that are not on YouTube, you do not see that, but I am rolling my eyes because it was fucking mind numbing, exhausting. And at least for us, we were always just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, what about, people that live in other places in the world where they don't have the luxury to say, I'm going to go keto, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. They have limited resources and they have to eat what's on their land. Why are they healthier than Americans that have access to everything? We always thought about those aspects of these indigenous people just eating what their bodies were attuned to because it was literally always part of the land that they live on. So, anyway, that's
well,
also a
that's a whole
separate.
different, yeah, it's a whole different conversation. Because
Yeah.
yeah, whole different conversation. But what I was really getting at is, we go from these aspects of, from diets to supplements to everything. It's, only do this, only do that. But really, when it comes down to it, everything, even when you look at blood work, you're looking for something to be in a state of balance. Blood work that's too much, it's going to be an issue in the body. Blood work that's too low, it's going to be an issue in the body. Same thing with the nervous system. Too much sympathetic, too much stress, too much adrenaline, too much cortisol, an issue. Too much parasympathetic. Well, you don't have any
You'll
energy
just be
to go.
sleeping.
Yep. It's like just that constant fatigue and, complete burnout. So the goal is to be in that constant state of balance. And when you think about that on the mental aspect, is that the body is, for the most part, you talked about the micro traumas of consuming the shitty Dunkin' Donuts coffee, etc., Starbucks, yada, yada, yada. And those are the micro traumas. It's like a lot of times people are like, my life's not that bad. I haven't had these huge traumatic events, but it's the micro traumas. And for some people, they do have that macro trauma. I always look at life as, if you're watching me on YouTube, it's a wavelength, it's a sine wave. And you can have a huge macro trauma, a huge intensity, a magnitude of something that creates an issue. And if the mind can't see the balance, the good and the bad of that event in that moment, well, the body's going to experience a stress response. And if it can't deal with that stress response, if it's too much, then something's going to break down. At the same time, there's the micro traumas, like, oh, nothing really that bad happened to me, but I'm every single day I'm overly stressed about money. And like I love my life, but you know, I love what I do. Like I get to help people, I get to do this. I'm making a bunch of money, but then I have to go home to a relationship that I fucking hate every
Mhm.
single day.
Yeah.
And that's a
Even if
micro
you're
stress.
saying, "Oh, it's not that bad," but internally you're like, "This sucks." Every day you wake up like, "Oh, another day." And the same thing, micro traumas, even with, people will say it's just my job, but they have a boss who like treats them really poorly. And they're like, whatever, he doesn't bother me that much, or she doesn't bother me that much. I just do my job and I go home. Micro trauma every day.
And when you think about those traumas, that's the duration aspect of that sine wave, and if that goes on long enough, it it pretty much equals out what a macro trauma would be.
Hmm.
So when you think about and associated specifically with the gallbladder, the gall is your assertiveness to be able to have the courage to make decisions to best serve yourself. And then when people are like, okay, the assertiveness, when that's connected to the bitterness, which bitters help break down gall,
Bile. Yeah.
anger, bile, which is a lot of times, bitter is one of the things that'd be recommended for people with gall issues. And but it's like, well, I'm not expressing anger. I'm not expressing these things. Well,
It
what's the
has to go
counter opposite of
somewhere.
what's the counter opposite of that? Too much or too little? It's an overexpression of that, or it's an underexpression. So some people are overly assertive. I'm expressing myself. I'm fucking just blah, blah, blah. Like that's still
Hmm.
an issue. But if you're also not expressing yourself, that's an issue. The goal is to have that balance of you're not overly or under,
Intentional.
you're just intentionally, authentically expressing your needs. There's a balance of that challenge and support from yourself and to yourself. And that's when mentally we're actually stop putting stress on that system. And when we stop putting stress on that system above from the mental state, that's when we actually give that gallbladder and that liver a chance to heal. Everything else
Yeah.
we're doing is we're just trying to repair the damage that's been done to one's inability to actually serve the gallbladder.
But what I kind of find fascinating and always just so amazing about, the body mind connection is that it's bidirectional. So we find that sometimes, especially before we did as much mental emotional work that we do now, some people would go ahead and we would do a certain protocol to help repair the gallbladder function or get the bile moving, help with the liver detoxification, and they would be in more of a mentally empowered place to work on these things that you're talking about, the expression, either overexpression, lack of expression, working through why do they feel angry, bitter, frustrated in their lives, and why are they tolerating that. And then, we find sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes we're working with people that, they feel like at the forefront of their lives, like I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with feeling very resentful, very bitter, very frustrated with my life. And, we lean into working with that more heavily. And then they actually end up, reaching out and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having this weird right-sided pain. Like, what do I do? And it's because now, them working through the mental, emotional aspects of things, their gallbladder is starting to push out these toxins. And so, what's great about it is we're able to step in and say, here's some, adjunct support in order to get the gallbladder moving, get the bile moving. And so, because your body or your mind becoming more balanced essentially stimulated now an improv detox, which is not comfortable, guys. And And I say this to you too, because for those of you that are not, working with us or working with anyone in this arena, you might have had a resolution to something you feel really bitter about. You maybe were very bitter with a family member, and maybe something happened that you ended up having a really vulnerable conversation, and maybe there was a somewhat of a resolution, or you were able to come to peace with something, feel a level of closure, and then all of a sudden you have this weird symptom. You have this symptom of right-sided rib cage pain, or you have some gastro symptoms. That's actually part of the resolution, because now the mental emotional resolution is helping to resolve, or it could be uncomfortable, but helping to resolve and improve the organs that are associated with the part of the brain that was processing that emotion, or that conflict, we should say.
Yeah, it can, unfortunately, it can get confusing for the common person because a symptom can, from the body, can be a cry for help saying, hey, mentally, you're not serving me. It's like with somatic, all the stress that you're directing, all the energy, all the communication is really crushing and hurting me. Please change how you're processing, how you're
Yeah.
thinking, how you're acting. But at the same time, if you're doing the changing of, balancing out how you're thinking and you're seeing that there's good with the bad and there's benefits with drawbacks and you're balancing that out, getting to a place of what's known as equanimity, a balanced mind, then, like you said, then you're going to allow the gallbladder to start living again, start actually working, and there's going to be changes. And then
Mhm.
those changes can be discomfort. And we could think like, oh my God, this is bad. I have this
Yep.
issue, but it's just actually the opposite. It's that area healing. So symptoms can get confusing because we always say there's a half truth. So you have to know the whole picture of what's going on, and from that to be able to support the whole person, the body, mind, and the spirit.
Well, I think it's a really important point what you just said, because you're 100% right that sometimes symptoms are the body's cry for help to say, hey, there's something wrong, do something. And then sometimes the symptoms are part of the resolution. And so there's kind of two major things, but one of the things that people always say to us, our clients specifically, is that the game changer of working with you guys is your level of accessibility. The fact that I can ask questions in the moment through the digital portal that we have. And the reason why that's so significant is because if somebody embarks on a healing process and things are not happening the way that maybe they thought they were going to happen in their brain, then they have the ability to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Can you help me either one, know what's going on, or two, navigate it? And so we address things very, very quickly. And they also now have this peace of mind to understand, like, is this normal or is this not? And then what are we doing about it? And I think that that is a really, really key factor of really understanding what's going on here. Because in the past, when we had our old practice in Belmar, New Jersey, and we were very, very busy, and we did not have this concierge level of contact with our clients. We did not have a digital portal. We did not have any of those things. You know, people would start a detox process that were brand new to the world of functional integrative medicine. And in their mind, they had this image that, like, oh, I just start this and everything is an upward trajectory. I'm going to be great. Everything's going to get better. That's not how it works always. There is very often going to be, there could be intense symptoms. There could be symptoms that you presume to be bad, uncomfortable, discomfort through that process. And if you don't understand what's going on, we've had people go put themselves in the emergency room. And then they're trying to say, "Oh, I just started these supplements and this and that with an integrative doctor." And then they're like, "What are you doing? You shouldn't take these supplements. No, the FDA doesn't approve these. You need to be on medication." And then it's a mind fuck for the person. because they didn't understand what was going on. They didn't understand how actually what they were experiencing was a benefit to them. And also, we don't ever want our patients to be uncomfortable. It's usually a matter of like one to two minor little tweaks. It could be a change in a dosage of a supplement. It could be put some red light on your abdomen. Like it could be the most simple little tweak, and they get through that discomfort very, very quickly. But it's like you don't know what you don't know. And this is one of the reasons why, especially if you've been trying to do this on your own and you keep getting stuck, it's not about giving up on yourself thinking, like, well, this is what I need to settle for. I need to settle for these symptoms or this diagnosis. It's just a matter of there are aspects that you potentially don't know how to navigate. And it's having someone who's already surpassed that, who could be the mentor to help you navigate that.
Yeah, and it's not a there's a lot we can do on our own for sure. Especially one that's done a lot of studying and has the tools.
Mhm.
But I always say it's, we both have our own coaches. And we have each other, which we get to use, which has its drawbacks and benefits. But it's understanding that you you want somebody that's gone through it themselves, have helped teach it so they own it even more themselves, so they can have a larger awareness. Because that's the whole thing about it is, you know, the only reason somebody can't make a change is due to limited awareness. And it's understanding that when we don't have awareness, that's when subjectivity controls, and that's when we're emotional, and that's when we're making decisions based on, you know, the the pleasure or pain cycle, you could easily say. But when we have the awareness, that's when we're more objective and we click, okay, I'm experiencing this, or you're experiencing this. Is this quote unquote a good thing or a bad thing? Is it good because there's changes happening because we actually just brought something back into a state of balance? Okay, awesome. How can we make this even better? Is it a bad thing? Is something out of balance? Okay. How can we bring that back into a state of balance? So it's about constantly taking everything as a feedback mechanism and using that to better serve oneself.
Yeah. Well, high level recap, guys. Lactose intolerance is not that you are doomed to never eat any level of dairy or lactose again in your life. It's a matter of investigating what is physically going on with your gallbladder and your liver, because again, these are very highly connected. Symptomatically, you might have highs and lows with your gastrointestinal system, bloating, etc., because your liver, your gallbladder are directly connected through your bile ducts to your intestines. So you might not have any symptoms in your liver or gallbladder, but you might have symptoms in your digestive system, AKA, you get irritated when you consume lactose. Then, in addition to that, is getting to the root cause of what's going on. Yes, there might be toxic load or stagnant bile that's going on in the liver and gallbladder. But in addition to that, there might be something when it comes to this level of expression. And, are you frustrated, overwhelmed, bitter, resentful about something? And as Dr. Nick mentioned, was it some type of macro event, high magnitude event that you experienced, or is it these little compounding, micro factors that, you really dislike your job. You're tolerating a friend who keeps treating you poorly. You're tolerating a partner that is also not treating you well. You have a colleague at work who's a huge pain in your ass, and, you keep brushing it under the rug, like, why does this person shouldn't bother me this much? The thing is we have a choice to keep ourselves in these situations, and we have a choice to surround ourselves with people that piss us off and take energy from us, or build us up. And those decisions are never easy decisions. They can be very uncomfortable, and they can obviously have they have positives, and then also they have negatives at times. We have gains, we have losses. But it's just knowing, it's raising your level of tolerance is really what it comes down to. This is a question that Nick and I ask each other every single week. We do a Monday meeting where we get to essentially kind of express ourselves, but also align with each other to make sure that we're showing up as best as we can for ourselves, but also for each other in the family. And one of the questions is, what did I tolerate last week? And how am I up leveling my tolerance? And it's essentially like, did I tolerate something big? Did I tolerate something little? And how am I actually changing that this week and moving forward in general?
And
Um,
and with that, you hear that, take the time to go through it. Don't just hear this podcast and be like, oh, that was some cool ideas, and then, go listen to another podcast. Like, if you picked up some ideas, like after this or sometime, like
mhm.
dedicate some space to go through and say, like, okay, what did I tolerate? And make a list of those things. And then it's like, okay, to change something, that it's pretty easy, honestly. Like, people think change is so hard. Um, but it's our attachment to it that's hard. It's change is easy. It's okay. Is it serving you? Well, probably not if you tolerated it. So stop it. If you can't stop it, how can I delegate it? If
Yeah.
I have to do it, okay, well, let's change the mindset short term. How can I use this to serve me? Hence, it's not always what you do, but how you do it. So, how can I start doing this differently so that it actually serves me? And then, as you're doing it, that's less stress, that's allowing the gallbladder to start working better. And you can create more time to give you more awareness to then figure out, okay, how can I delegate this now? Or how can I stop doing it?
Yeah. A phrase that I heard, I've been doing a lot of studying of some of the um, top CEOs and essentially like old money mindsets, people that have had generational wealth, like decade or century after century. I'm not decade after decade, century after century, and just like learning like how they think. And one thing that they said was build clarity, not schedules, like talking about from a weekly rhythm perspective. And and I think that the average person needs a little bit of both, but essentially, like as you took the deeper dive into what they were trying to say, they're essentially trying to say, you know, don't build busyness, a regimented schedule of all the shit you need to do, a big long to-do list. It's a matter of having enough time in your week that you can create massive clarity. And then the other portion of that is then taking action on that clarity. So the only schedule that you really build is around the clarity of what's going to move the needle forward, what's going to give you more peace, what's going to give you more of that expression, what's going to build your family dynamics and not break them. And, we lived it for many years. Most of us just have a lot of busyness on our schedules. And, if we really took the time to think about like what's priority and what's not, most of it is not priority. But we feel like we have to because of the external influences. Your kid should be in extracurricular activities. Your kid should be doing this. You should be doing this. You need to go to work, but you also should be social and you should be involved in your kid's school and you should. So if we want to live that life, we're going to continue to feel overwhelmed, frustrated, bitter. All right, we're going to leave you with that, guys.